So welcome back to Inside Medical Malpractice with lawyer Gary Well. If you haven't heard it already, please take time to listen to the longer podcast where Gary talks about the COVID-19 class action against long-term care centers in Ontario. It's a fascinating and insightful conversation which you won't want to miss. Gary's joining us today from Toronto. He's a managing partner at Davidson law firm in Toronto, Ontario, and he's just offered a wealth of information to all of us. He's a very experienced lawyer, and that's obvious when you're talking to him and listening to him. But what I wanted to learn today is more about Gary Well, the guy, and just to understand a little bit more about what makes him tick. He's taken on what he's calling one of the toughest fights or challenges of his entire life and one of the most important cases. And I'd like to hear more about the kind of guy that does that. So welcome, Gary. It's just great to have you back.
Well, it's nice to be back.
Thank you. So question one, talk to us a little bit about what took you into the profession of law and what is the role of a managing partner in a law firm? I don't even know that. So tell us all.
All right. Well, I'll start with the question of what brought me to the law. As far back as I can remember, I always seem to have wanted to go into law. And although I don't really know the initial reason for the interest in law, because I certainly didn't have a family member that was a lawyer, and I didn't actually even know a lawyer personally. But I somehow knew in my mind that I wanted to be a lawyer. Back when I was growing up, I used to watch Perry Mason. So I'm probably dating myself a little bit by talking about Perry Mason, because probably most of the people that are going to watch this podcast might not even know who Perry Mason is. But he was a famous criminal lawyer who always, during the course of cross-examination, got the witness he was cross-examining to confess to the crime that his client was charged with. So not a very realistic portrayal of the law, but it initially got me hooked. Then I remember later in high school, I remember studying To Kill a Mockingbird, the famous novel by Harper Lee. And reading that book and then later seeing the movie did really profoundly affect me and sort of reinforce that I really wanted to be a lawyer. But again, in To Kill a Mockingbird, it portrayed a criminal lawyer, and it was a lawyer in the deep south of the United States defending an African American who was wrongfully accused of rape, and the trials and tribulations of that case in front of a white jury and in the 1960s was something that moved me, as the law being a very noble profession, and that reinforced that is what I wanted to do. Now, I never was quite sure about what area of law I wanted to go into, and that really changed a number of times as I was going through university and law school. At a certain point, I thought I might want to, I was really interested in labor law, and I was inspired by one of my university professors who taught me an industrial relations course, and I thought, oh, I think I want to be a labor lawyer. Later in law school, I had a very good professor teaching me anti-combines law, and it kind of inspired me. Maybe I want to do, competition law as a profession. I articled at, one of the largest firms in the country, and I thought I might want to do commercial litigation at that point. And then I went from a very, very large firm to a sole practitioner after that, when I first started practicing law. And the sole practitioner did a mixture of civil law and criminal law. And initially I did a fair bit of criminal law and some civil litigation of all different types. And then in 1986, I joined the firm that I currently head. When I joined in 1986, it was strictly a defense insurance firm. We didn't do plaintiff's work. We defended insurance companies, mostly in personal injury litigation. And then in around 1990, I started developing a plaintiff's practice and built it into what is now part of our firm. So we do plaintiff's personal injury work, and we also do continue to do defense insurance work. And that really is quite unique in Canada. There's not many firms that do both areas of law. So that creates, areas of conflict, and that requires, special management. I think it's a very positive thing, because I think we can go to clients and say that we understand both sides of a lawsuit, and we really do, because we have top defense lawyers in the country in our firm and top plaintiffs lawyers, and we obviously communicate and talk all the time. And we really understand what's happening on the other side of cases. So once I developed the plaintiff's personal injury practice, I have engaged in a wide variety of cases. So I do medical malpractice cases. I do a lot of those cases. I do a lot of bad faith litigation. I do class action litigation. I do some commercial litigation. So I have a very wide and varied portfolio, and I encourage others in the firm to have a wide, diverse practice. So since about 2000, I've also managed the firm, so that's brought a whole further level of responsibility to what I do. I really see that there are three main functions. One is to ensure that we're mentoring the younger lawyers and staff to bring them along and develop them as fine lawyers to be the very best lawyer that they can be. So that's a very important part of my function. The second is to ensure that we have a proper, we have enough files to keep everyone busy. So business promotion is a big aspect of. And the other is just to manage overall, both the defense side of the practice and the plaintiff side of the practice, and make sure that there are no conflicts going forward, and making sure that, we have a work environment that is conducive to providing excellent levels of service to our clients.
Well, it sounds like a very successful career so far, and now you're just going to take on the biggest job of your life. So let's find out a little bit more about what makes you tick. I'm really interested in that. How do you spend your time when you're not busy doing those 1,000 things you just told us that you do in your law practice?
So I do spend a lot of time on my work as a lawyer, it's more than a 40-hour work week, as you can appreciate. There's evening work and there's weekend work, and sometimes, unfortunately, even work on holidays that is required. But I don't work all the time, so I do. I have a very active life otherwise. So I've been happily married for 30 years now. I have two wonderful daughters who are 26 and 23, and they're just finishing their educations. We have done a lot of traveling with our girls. Like, we've traveled the world with our girls. And so our entire family enjoys traveling. We take probably 3 or 4 big vacations every year. we do it as a family, and it's a great bonding experience, and we've learned a lot as a result of our travels. I'm a golfer. I love golfing whenever I can. I love to read. So as you can see, I have a very full life, both professionally and personally, and I really do love my life, and I'm so happy to be able to do all the things that I have done in the past and hope to do in the future.
Congratulations. It sounds successful on many levels. Are you ever going to retire?
You know, I don't think about that, and I certainly have no current plans to retire. I really love what I'm doing, and I can't imagine not doing what I'm doing. So I wake up each morning. I look forward to getting to the challenge of my work. And it is very challenging work. I mean, it's stressful, but it's challenging. And you also learn so much. I mean, you learn from each individual client that you deal with. And as a result of working on their cases, you learn a whole new area I mean, every case has its unique perspective, and you learn so much. So I've really never been bored a day of my professional life. I'm learning something new each and every day. So I really don't want it to end. And I think being able to act for individual plaintiffs can be very gratifying when you get a good result. And when you can go to a family and say, you know, we've been in this fight for 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, but I've got a result, and they're so happy and grateful for what you've been able to provide for them. You've championed their cause, and it makes them feel so good, and it really makes me feel so good. And it's something that you need to experience over and over again. So that really is what keeps me going. I want to continue to provide good service, a good level of service to my clients. And I want to do this for as long as I possibly can.
Well, that sounds great. And I didn't ask if you're going to retire because I think you should, because I'm in the same camp as you. Like, so far at this point, never retire, because what am I going to do with all this knowledge in my head? And I've talked to so many lawyers who said exactly what you just said. I'm going to do this as long as I possibly can. So my next question was what gets you up in the morning, and I think you answered that perfectly just a second ago when you said you're grateful, excited every day to get up and go to work and see what happens. What keeps you up at night?
Well, I think, you do worry about your clients, and you worry about how your clients are doing. You worry about your ability to deliver what it is that they should, receive. I mean, it's largely dependent on our efforts that a lot of these severely disabled individuals, they're relying on us to get a good result in their lawsuits so that they can lead a dignified life. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Profoundly disabled people, they do require a level of care which is expensive. And if we don't deliver in the lawsuit, they really have nowhere else to turn. So there is a level of stress that comes with that. But having said that, I actually do sleep very well at night. I don't suffer from insomnia, and I get a good night's sleep almost every night. And I really need it to energize me for the next day so that I can get to work for my clients. So
I think you're probably on track for a long, long life, because I think a good night's sleep and a sense of purpose are two things that can keep you going for a long, long time and get you up every single day with a sense of excitement. So, share with us what's something that people consistently get wrong about you.
Well, I think one of the things might be that I've been underestimated many times in my career. Now, I started out as a young lawyer, getting thrown in against some pretty seasoned, experienced lawyers on big cases, and thrown in myself. I mean, I look back on my career, and I was never once second chair at a trial. I was always first chair, even as a first year lawyer. Um, so, um, so you're coming up against lawyers who, many lawyers who probably didn't even know who I was, and facing me in court, and probably was underestimated on a number of occasions during my career. And that might have actually been advantageous to me, because if you underestimate the other side, you may not do everything that you need to do for your client in that case. And maybe my client was the beneficiary of that in many cases. I think as my career progressed, I mean, people certainly did get to know who I was, but because I was always changing the focus of the area that I was practicing in, I often changed. And so the very first time I tried a medical malpractice trial, I'm sure there were lawyers on the other side that might have thought, well, we know he's a pretty good lawyer on personal injury cases, but he's never really done a medical malpractice trial, and we're not quite sure if he's really going to go through with it. And I think maybe what people underestimated is my strong will and desire to succeed, and my strong work ethic, because even though my opponents are at times more experienced than I am, but I don't think they're able to outwork me. And I think that's given me some edge. So I would say my opponents sometimes underestimate me, and that's given me a slight edge in those cases, I would say.
Well, there you have it. I love what you said, because I was just thinking in my head, what were the qualities within you as a person that allowed you to take on those big things as first lawyer from the very beginning? I mean, that takes a certain kind of person. There's a grit and tenacity and courage that goes with that. But I love how you just said it's your strong will and your hard work ethic and preparation. So thanks for that. That's a great piece of advice for everybody. So one last question, and I think we'll call this done. I mean, I could talk to you for a long time about a lot of things, but knowing what you now know, what advice would you offer your younger self?
Well, that's a really good question, and so I think the advice, and when I'm talking about my younger self, I think I'm also sending out a message to other new lawyers, younger lawyers just starting out. So I think the message is that you have to work very hard. It is a difficult profession, and there's a huge learning curve. So for the first 5 or 10 years at least, you have to put in an extra effort, and you have to work hard to rise to the top of the profession, or rise to a level of competence so that you can do good work for your clients. And but I think you always have to maintain a sense of balance as well. And I think there were times during my career I probably did work too hard, and I think in that first maybe 10 or 15 years, I seemed to have worked all the time, and I really didn't take holidays, and I worked weekends and evenings, and you lose something as a result of doing that. Being too focused, and you have to have a level of balance in your life, and I think I do have that now. But looking back on it, I probably should have been more focused on having an adequate balance in my life and in my earlier years. But I think if you go forward and you view this journey as more of a marathon as opposed to a sprint, you can have, a satisfying long career. Because I know many lawyers that are in this profession for 40 years, 45 years. I've got one of my partners, he's going to be enjoying his 50th anniversary as a lawyer, coming up next year. So it is a long haul, and you have to maintain a balance in order to enjoy the profession over that long period of time.
I think that's great life advice for many people in many professions. So thank you. I think that will cross a lot of lines for people. Just tell me, out of interest sake, have you or will you encourage your daughters to go into law?
Well, they're not in law. I mean, they've my eldest daughter completed her master's degree, and she's now working. And my youngest is just over in England completing her master's degree, and she'll be finished in August. So neither of them will be lawyers, but they've done a tremendous job to do well in their chosen profession, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So they're going to have highly successful careers at what they truly love doing.
Fantastic. You can't hope for more than that for your kids, can you? Just success and happiness and on their way, contributing to the world. Well, I think we'll end it with there, Gary. I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much again. For those of you listening in, if you haven't heard it already, be sure to listen to Gary's podcast where he's talking about the COVID-19 class action against long-term care facilities. It's fascinating and it's insightful, and I promise you'll learn something from listening to that, so don't miss it. So thank you so much again, Gary. I'd love to have you back another time to talk about other subjects, because it sounds like your expertise is broad. And take good care. Take good care. Good luck with everything that we've talked about today.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you today. And let's do it again.
Yes.